This is Katie Sutton, intuitive channel and founder of Zen Within Academy and the New Earth Now School with your June 2026 energy update. I'm excited to talk with you a little bit about the energies and kind of give you a heads up as to what's going on because I feel like we've got some challenge that we might be feeling right now. And I know you all sometimes feel like you're alone in navigating that. So I hope that this update will allow you to feel more in the collective and supported as you navigate the month of June. Don't forget to like and subscribe this video if you don't want to miss any of my updates. So let's dive into the themes for June 2026. So the first theme is identity shifts. And as I have been kind of tuning into this, another word for this might be ego death. And I don't want you to be scared by that, but I do want you to understand what is happening. So in May, we crossed a bit of a threshold where the best way I can describe it to you is that we had maybe 10 different options available to us on any given possibility of how we wanted to create our next steps, how we wanted to create in our life. And we all of a sudden got access to 20 more options. Now, in reality, we've probably always had access to all 30 of those options of how we could create. But a lot of you worked in April in a lot of fire energy and in the beginnings of May to basically burn away some things that were limiting beliefs or limiting patterns, ancestral energies, just a whole host of different things that were limiting how you could create. And as you have dismantled that, it's almost like this green field of opportunity has just presented itself to you. And that is great news. But oftentimes we find that to be challenging when we are trying to create and we get a lot of new opportunities and we don't really know which direction to go because it might be a radically different direction than how we have created in the past. Now, this can apply in your relationships, it can apply in your financial space, in your living environment, so many different ways, in your health. There are so many different ways that this can be showing up. So, this theme of identity shifts is really just you being willing to look at all of the roles that you've played, all the identities that you have carried, past, present, and maybe a little bit of ideas of what you thought would be in the future, and be willing to allow things to shift to conform to what is present for you now, what you value now, what you believe now, and how you want to create going forward. And this also means that there might be some friction coming up in some of your relationships because when we are changing and growing at such a rapid pace, because basically what's happened is that we are increasing in frequency and we can pack a lot more data in these higher frequency bands that we are now experiencing in our consciousness. And so you might be finding that you have radically different ideas or different ways of being that you want to just start adopting in your life, and you're afraid of how others are going to perceive that, who you might lose, how they're going to react and how they might judge you. Are they going to understand you? There might be a lot of stories up about why you can't claim some of these new ways of being, these identity shifts that you are starting to feel stirring in your being. And so the encouragement from the guides this month is to be really brave. It's that saying of feel the fear and do it anyways. And I know that can be very challenging. When fear arises, it tends to shut us down and put us into a freeze response, and then we feel like we can't move forward. And so, in these identity shifts, if there's a new way of being that you want to exude in your relationships, at work, in your financial landscape, whatever that identity shift is, take small, measured actions to enable that to continue to come online. And you're probably going to have to do this while experiencing fear because the fear is there. And this is why I said this is really about ego death. The fear is there as a layer in your field to try to keep you comfortable and keep you operating in what you know. Now, a lot of you are really uncomfortable in your realities because you're actually being pushed to go further and go beyond where you've been before, but you're resisting that energy, or maybe you're not feeling worthy of going to that next place. And so you're locking it down. And that ego layer of our energy field is there to try to keep us operating in our status quo. And so, what you're really bumping into when you are claiming a new identity or a new way of being in the world is bumping into that ego layer and saying to it, thank you so much for protecting me, for keeping me safe, for helping me be the way I have been for so long. But we're going to try something new now. And I don't need you to protect me from that new thing. This is literally a conversation with this egoic part of your being to say, we're going to move through a death process. We're going to let some things go. We're going to release some things and we're going to claim something new. And I don't need you to protect me from that. And these protector parts do not need to be the villain in this case. We're looking at this part of us with love and saying, I appreciate that you've been trying to keep me safe by keeping me in this zone, but it's really not working for me anymore. Let's have a negotiation here. Let's have come to a compromise of how we're going to move forward. And then we reassign those protector parts new jobs. They are here to help us know when we're not choosing in alignment with that new identity and we're going back into old patterns. They're here to blare the alarm sound when that is occurring. That's what we want those protector parts to be doing. We want them to be aiding us on our path forward. But so many of us have so many conditioned energies about not moving forward. And let's also add in that when your identity is changing, a lot of you are moving in radical new directions for the entire collective, meaning you're bringing in frequencies or ideas or ways of being that feel radical compared to the norm. So not only are you bumping into your own resistant parts, but you're also bumping into the resistance in the collective to change. And if we calibrate to that collective resistance, we are never going to create the new systems and structures on this planet and the new ways of being that are going to allow us to live in more connection and less duality. And so part of this is us practicing in our own individual environments how we can push through this dualistic energy and this fear and keep coming out on top, keep moving forward and keep growing and expanding. And if we can do that in our individual lives, we're setting a course for the entire collective because we're bringing in frequencies of bravery and courage and new ideas and new beginnings for the entire collective. Now, that doesn't mean that everybody's going to adopt it right away. Of course not. But we have to be willing to go first. We have to be willing to put something out into the ethers before others do. So, in this theme of identity shifts, it's also a collective identity shift that we are going through. You are seeing people really struggling to abide by the rules of the various countries that they are living in. Some people are leaving those countries altogether. Others are just realizing that the dream that was given to us has been torn to shambles and maybe never existed in the first place, and that the real dream is very different than what we were sold. And so you have a lot of people waking up, and there's a lot of hopelessness and resentment and anger and bitterness and a kind of apathy showing up because it's like, oh, this is the way it is, and this is not what I want anymore, but I am powerless to do anything about it. You all have a immense capacity as individuals to be able to create change in your individual expression, in your individual lives. Now, it may be counter to what you believe that you can create right now because you're working through some unworthiness, you're working through some shame, some guilt, some programming around how you can create. But as that dismantles, those new timelines, those new opportunities, those 20 additional possibilities that I told you about at the beginning, you're going to start to see them reflected back to you in different ways. And your job, when you see that reflected back, is to go, I want that. Yes, that is it. That is exactly how I want to live. That is exactly how I want to create, or at least that's a flavor of how I want to create. Show me more of that universe. Show me more of how I can live into that frequency. Show me what actions I need to take to change the things in my life that I need to change. So that is the experience that I get to have. And I think that some of you will be calling in little micro experiences of these new possibilities and these new identities and trying it on for periods of time. And then you'll regress or feel like you're regressing into a older version of you. But really what you're doing is just looking at all the things that aren't congruent and asking, and the universe is asking you to say, I no longer need to carry that frequency. I no longer need to carry that vibration. I'm willing to let that old version of me go, that old version of me die, so that I can claim this thing over here that feels really good, even though I'm afraid of it. So that is the first theme of identity shifts. And we will be working on this and all of the others in our healing circle this month, because the themes are pretty impactful, because we're leading up to summer solstice in the Northern Hemisphere, which is going to be very powerful and really activating. So we're going to do a lot of prep work for that in our group healing this month on the 10th. So let's go on to the second theme, which is change without a roadmap. So this kind of ties into the first thing that I was talking about. A lot of you have been making changes in your lives in the past because you were facing friction, or you were facing something that didn't feel good anymore, and the universe kind of force you into change. I think of my own life in this, where I was really knowing that I needed to start Zen Within Academy and start doing my work in the world. And I had been doing it on the side for a long time. And I hired a business coach and said, yes, I'm going to do this. And about 2 weeks later, I got laid off from my corporate job. The universe saw that and was like, you said that you're ready on some level, you're ready for this. We're going to kick you out of what you have known and push you in to the next chapter, even though you're not ready. And there was a lot of panic that set in, because I knew that I wasn't ready. And so I just started asking the universe, show me the way to be in this new timeline that you have activated for me without all this fear. And I had so many opportunities that presented themselves, so that in that 8-month window that I really needed to build this business to something that was profitable so that I could sustain my family, that the universe built me a bridge, and it was beautiful, but I had to ask for it. I knew that I was too afraid and I was shut down and I couldn't create in that vibration. And I asked for support. And I didn't know what the roadmap was. I didn't know what was going to happen. I didn't know how change was going to occur. I just knew I needed support, and I asked for it. And so, this theme of change without a roadmap is really speaking to these additional options that are now coming online for you all. But these additional options that are coming online for you all, that are possibilities that maybe you hadn't even considered, or maybe you had considered, but you thought, oh, that's never going to be for me. It's going to take some bravery to jump into those new timelines, and to allow your life to begin to change to align with that timeline without any roadmap. Because understand that as a collective, we are moving through parts of literal space that we haven't moved through in a long time, probably thousands and thousands of years. We're also getting light and energy and frequency that we've never received on this planet before. We are accessing things that we have never done before as a collective. It cannot help but create new possibilities for you all as individuals, if that's what's happening on the collective level. I was with my husband last night, and we were at this kind of almost Roman bath kind of place here in Charlotte, and we were just sitting there, and there was this guy that was traveling, and he was talking about how he's traveling from place to place, and he's working remotely, and he's doing all these things. And he was just talking very excitedly about all of the immense possibility that is available right now, but how it's also really scary for people who are in the workforce, who are used to creating in this one way and are very resistant to change. And it just struck me, that is the energy of this now moment. There's an immense amount of opportunity, and there's also an immense amount of fear. And if you tune into the fear and you are worried about what's changing and you're holding on really tightly, you're going to miss the wave that is available right now for you to strike out in all new ways of being as an individual. And we need new energy. We need new possibility. We need people who are bravely doing these things in society, because what is happening right now is very broken. The way we have operated has been in a false illusion of freedom, a false illusion of the quote unquote American dream here in the United States. It's really just been golden handcuffs. And so there is a green field of opportunity when things are falling apart, to come up with new solutions and new ways of being and new ways of creating. And that's the case in your own individual lives too. If you feel like something is falling apart, or something that has always worked for you is no longer working, great. That is the universe showing you that you are stagnant in that area and it is time for a change. And so you don't necessarily have a roadmap of what that change is going to entail and what that change is going to look like, but your openness and your desire and your willingness for change is what we're really working on in the month of June. In July, stuff is going to shift big time. There's a threshold that we're going to move through in July and a frequency that we're going to shift in July that's going to be big for a lot of you. And so June is the month to prepare and grease the wheels to say, okay, I'm okay with change. I might be a little scared. It might be hard for me, or maybe I changed too much and I'm trying to find stability, right? It could be the opposite vibration for some of you. But being willing to be in this vibration of change and making peace with it and finding your stability in that, that's a big part of what they're going to ask you to work on in June. And so maybe you start small. Or maybe you're like, Katie, if I start small, I'll never get there. And I want to go really big and I want to make a really big change. And I'm just going to be really brave. Even though I don't know the roadmap, I know in my being that this is the right thing for me. And so I'm going to do it. This is a really big month for you all to tap into that courage and that bravery and get support from those around you. Sometimes when we're talking about change, if we're talking about it with some people, their fear might be encroaching on ours. So it's important that when we're talking about changes that we're trying to make, that we are talking about it with people who can handle that. And if we have those people in our lives, that we're asking them to hold that vision with us. And for those that maybe can't hold that, maybe we're not having those conversations. Maybe they're going to find out when the change is already made. Really choose your communication of what's happening in your experience carefully so that what is going on inside of your being can be held really sacred. And you don't beat yourself up if you're going slower than you would like, or there's procrastination coming in, or there's fear coming in. Try to be gentle and loving with those parts that are in resistance, as we talked about in the first theme, so that they can transform with you. If we're shaming ourselves, we're not going to be able to tap into that courage and that bravery. And also look outside of yourselves and find the people who are already doing the thing that you want to do. Look and do some research and find out if that radical thing that you're wanting to do, somebody else has done it, and learn from their experience. Just because you all are often way showers in your own soul collective doesn't mean that there aren't others who have also already been working or are working on these same kinds of things that you all are trying to change. Okay. So look around you for inspiration, look around you for support. And if you can't find it, ask spirit to put it in your path. I remember when I was trying to make that job change, I kept asking for examples of people who were doing the work that I wanted to do, who were really successful and had found the balance and not gone into a place of scarcity. And when I saw those templates and I saw that they existed, I was like, I can do that. It's possible for me to do that too. I might not know all the things that they do, but I can learn and I can do it in my own way. Look outside of you for that inspiration. And sometimes I look outside of me for inspiration in non-human places too. When I look at the energy of nature and I look at how she finds a way, Mother Nature finds a way no matter what to survive, that's very inspiring for me too. And I try to calibrate to that energy too. So let's go on to the third theme, which is navigating injustice. So interestingly, in a lot of my sessions recently, I have people showing up talking to me about injustice in some way. And to define injustice, what I really mean by that is we're feeling into something not being fair. And that can be in our own personal lives. We can be seeing what's happening in the collective. We can see people with a lot of resources squandering those resources and see the injustice of that. Our capacity to witness injustice and not allow it to make us hopeless and not shut us down and put us into freeze is a big thing that we are currently working on. In order to create all that change and to do things in these different ways, if we are aligning only with the frequency of injustice and we are battling against that injustice constantly by judging what's happening in our external collective as all bad and all wrong, then we are in a state of judgment with the possibility of change that is also being presented in that injustice that is occurring. And this is, I'm going to go back to Mr. Rogers here, where he says, look for the helpers. Always in moments of injustice, there is an activation of collective energy, of awareness of something that needs to change, and people banding together to start to foster new ideas of how to combat something like that from happening in the future. Now, what I also witness though is that the powers that be that are perpetrating that injustice energy and doing the quote unquote bad things and the negative things are not wanting us to think outside the box and to come at that with new solutions. And so they're pumping more and more fear into the collective and more hopelessness by default into the collective, that we have all the power and you don't have any power and you can't change anything. And so, if we are going to be willing and able to come up with new ideas and new creative solutions to the continual roadblocks that are being placed in front of us to not evolve in the way that we want to into more unity, if we're going to continue to be creative and work around that energy and that game that they're wanting us to play, we can't get so mired in the injustice that we become hopeless. We need to see the injustice as a catalyst energy for us to be willing to take action and to come up with new ideas of how to do things that you play outside of the rule book that they're trying to make us play by. Because the reality is, they wouldn't be pumping so much fear and frustration and just division energy into the field and trying to create that if they weren't scared and on the ropes, so to speak. And so we cannot let that energy get us down. And yes, this is happening at the collective level on big things that are going on, but this is also in your own individual lives. I think we're going to be clearing a lot of energy from our current incarnation, from past lives, from ancestral energies of injustice and lack of fairness and places where we feel like we've been wronged, we've been rejected, we've been abandoned. I think this is going to come up on multiple levels at the individual person level too this month, because this is just an energy that needs to be balanced. We need to find neutrality with this particular frequency so that it doesn't disempower us as a collective. And so you might find some things this month that you're like, man, that person got that opportunity and they've only been working on that for like 6 weeks and I've been working on it for 6 years. In that moment, we need to give ourselves permission to feel the pain of, this isn't fair. This has been so hard for me. We need to allow ourselves to grieve. That isn't fair for us and we feel hurt. And then as we process those emotions, we need to allow that to light a fire, ideally in our lower chakras and our solar plexus, that ignites our being to say, okay, all they're showing me is that it's possible. Where have I been working against myself to keep me from having that reality that I am feeling jealous of or feeling that's not fair that they got that opportunity? That's one example. Another example might be somebody treats you very unfairly and misjudges you, or does something that makes you feel unworthy or shame or guilt. And you're just like, this isn't just, this is just totally not true. We're going to have to look at that energy and see that how people judge us is often a reflection of their own fears. And all they're showing us is where they are afraid. And then we come right back to self and say, okay, why am I letting this person's belief be my reality? And so last month we started working on this because we were working on owning our third eye and our crown chakra and owning how people perceived us and owning our vibration out in the world. When we start to own that, we're going to start to really see the people who can't handle that. And it's going to feel like injustice. It's going to feel like that's not fair. And so this is a big one, especially if you had a lot of stuff happen to you in childhood that was really unfair. This energy of injustice and lack of fairness might be really big for you. Libra people, I'm looking at you because y'all are also about fairness and balance and justice, but this is probably present for a lot of us this month in some way. So try to let yourself feel what's coming up and then realize what it's trying to teach you. And you might need to vent about this to someone. You might need to be seen in your injustice, but try not to live there, because that becomes a victim frequency that is very hard to get out of. And then we're always in battle with the universe because we think that things aren't fair. If we say, for example, nobody ever listens to me, guess what? Nobody's ever going to listen to you. Nobody ever takes me seriously. Okay. Nobody's going to take you seriously. We also have to pay attention to how we're talking about these injustices and the way that we're just reaffirming them with our language and the things, the stories that we're telling. To feel something means we move through it in totality in about 3 or 4 minutes at most. Oftentimes it takes 90 seconds to move through a full feeling. If you're getting stuck in something, that means that you're in the story a little bit. And sometimes we need to be there. Sometimes we need to work that out. But just notice if you've been stuck in an injustice program for a really long time with maybe something in your life and it is now controlling you, it is keeping you small. Because when we're in that frequency where we have been victimized and we're feeling that lack of fairness and we're perpetuating that story, we're limiting the different possibilities that we have access to of how we can create. So if something happens and it's a brand new experience, give yourself time to process that. But if you've been in this story of injustice for a long time, be willing to close the door on that this month if you can. I think that will open some energy for you in the month of July that will be very beneficial. So that is the third theme of navigating injustice. So the fourth theme, and this is going to be a big one for Healing Circle because I can just see how necessary it is in the collective, is healing community wounds. So what I am finding in the month of June is that we're going to be working on these community wounds of rejection, excommunication, being pushed out of the tribe at a much grander level. All of those first themes that I talked with you about were about being brave and doing things outside the norm. You all have had experiences in other lifetimes where you have done that, and it has created loss or difficulty for you because at the time when you were creating that change, the collective was not ready for it. Now, you're going to keep experiencing that in multiple lifetimes going forward because a lot of you that work with me or listen to my videos are at the forefront of consciousness evolution. And that means that you're always challenging the status quo to some degree. Maybe not in all parts of your life, but in some part of your life, you're challenging the status quo. And that means that you're out in front and you're pushing a new narrative, you're pushing a new possibility, a new way of creating. A lot of people, when they step out in that, get challenged right away because it's making people uncomfortable. That doesn't mean that we shouldn't do it. And so we're going to work in the month of June in getting more neutral to those old stories of excommunication and rejection, whether it's in this lifetime, in past lives, but also in your ancestral lineage, so that you all can more bravely hold these audacious frequencies, this audacity of who am I to create this? Who am I to do this? So it's important that we heal some of the trauma and the wounding with that so that there's a more grounded, stable, balanced foundation that we can build from going forward, where we're not in reactivity to those old trauma wounds. So we're going to work on this a lot in our group healing transmission, along with all the other themes, because I really want you all to feel empowered to be able to create change in the way that you want in your lives and to be brave in this. But you're bumping into a lot of things that are not even activated in present time, that are not even real time stories, but are old fears that you're just running into over and over again that are just keeping you stuck. You might find a group of people misunderstanding you, or you might find that there's some group dynamics or some community dynamics where you're like, man, I just don't feel good about this community or what's happening. I was explaining to somebody the other day that there's a difference between community and friendship. Friendship is what we build with an individual when we're going deep in relationship and we're working on reciprocity and we're working on unconditional love and we're working on relational aspects that are really deep. Community can also look like friendship, meaning we could have friends in our community, but community is really us learning how to be with larger groups of people with common interests and working towards a common goal. And that is not super comfortable most of the time. Community is complicated. Community is not easy. And if we look at what's happening in our collective, where we are in one community here, we feel separate, but we are really one. It is complicated. We have all different likes and tastes and desires and things that we want to create and beliefs. And learning to be in tolerance of those differences while continuing to choose what is right for us is the path of community. Now, certainly, if you're feeling unsafe or you're feeling really negated in a community, please leave that behind and find one that feels more in alignment. but don't be afraid to deal with friction. I think as we are learning to come back together as humans, and this is especially true in the United States because we are more polarized than I feel like any other part of the human collective because of what's been conditioned into us in the last 5 years so much. It's gonna take a lot to rebuild these connections, and we have to practice. And so working on some of these old wounds, I think will allow us to be able to practice being in community in more neutrality. And a lot of times it also looks like us being very self-aware. And I'm not talking about being in perfection and how you're showing up and policing yourself. I'm talking about being aware of what's happening in your body, what's happening in your nervous system, and being able to track that to a degree so that when you go into a new space and you're feeling a certain way, that you immediately go, oh, that's me picking up on this person over here and how they're feeling in this moment. In that moment, we can come back into self. When we are embodied in self, and we know who we are and we're operating in that connection to self in a really distinct way, it's much easier for us to be in community because we don't take everything so personally and we don't enmesh with other people's experiences and allow what's happening for them to dictate what's happening for us in that moment. We expand our tolerance level when we are more embodied. And a lot of you have been working very distinctly this year on getting more embodied. I've heard it from you. You're really working on doing you and stepping into a little bit of this Uranus and Gemini energy that we're in of like creating from the self. Last month we worked on creating from the inside out versus the outside in. When we do that and we're really owning that, our ability to be with other people who are also creating from the inside out, not the outside in, gets better. Now, sometimes if we have been in a way of being where we're calibrating to others, we find ourselves in community with other people who are doing the same thing, and then it gets really messy really quickly. So you might find that as you step more into yourself and creating from the inside out and integrating what we worked on in May, that your communities do need to change or evolve, or you call in new community to embolden that part of you. That doesn't mean that these others are going to completely fall away, but they might change. Some people might fall out of that community because you're evolving and what you need is evolving, and they may not be in resonance anymore. And so this is also tying into that identity shift theme and the change without a roadmap. So being willing to let people come and go and processing the emotions that come up with that. Because one of the things that I've realized recently is I'm constantly creating community containers that are constantly dissolving. And I love the containers that I create, the retreats, the workshops, the classes, the circles. And it is also really hard for my inner child because I'm constantly losing people. And I'm working on being more neutral to that because I don't want that to keep me from creating the thing. I have found that sometimes I will be hesitant to create new containers because I'm already pre-grieving the end of it and the loss of it. What I'm now trying to look at is, can I celebrate that I create community all the time? That I create moments of connection for people constantly, and that I get to participate in that and I get to be a part of that connection and that I get to keep doing that. So instead of looking at the constant endings, I want to reframe it and look at the constant new beginnings that are happening. But that is an example from my life of how I'm working on this particular theme this month. So as we're clearing out these old community wounds, I hope you all will find more neutrality and more ease and more joy, because the undercurrent of this is that I am seeing a level of pervasive loneliness and disconnection and sadness. And I've been seeing it for a while. And something happened in May where it was like we reached the fever pitch with that. And I'm watching it move through as a ripple in the collective of us all trying to process this disconnection and this loneliness. And we go through stages of processing this because we're working on coming back together and coming back into community and coming back into unity. And more of us are having glimpses of what that new reality of connection and unity looks like. And then we're finding, oh, but this part of my life can't hold that or isn't holding that. What needs to change? And so we're constantly processing, oh, I see where we're going and I want to hold that. And then we're processing where it doesn't exist yet. and having to navigate that duality that still is in existence. And if we keep focusing on the places where it doesn't exist, we're going to keep being disappointed and we're going to keep being in that grief and we're going to keep being in the sadness. So part of this is turning towards what is already working in this new way of being more connected to one another and being in co-creation with one another and upholding that in our reality and literally saying to the universe, I want more of that. This feels really good. How can I create more of this? How can I help other people to experience this? How can I bring more people into this? What does that look like? And that is a huge focus for me in my work right now with my husband, in our work in Zen Within Academy, with the people that I'm collaborating now in my women's work and my retreats that I'm doing, my workshops that I'm doing. It has just become incredibly obvious to me that nobody else is going to really focus on it around me. So I've got to find a way to start to navigate this. And I keep asking Spirit to show me the best ways to do it. And Spirit keeps presenting opportunities for me of ways to create these containers. And so I'm going to keep creating them. And you all should be doing the same thing in your own lives, even in small ways. You don't have to be a teacher, a group leader, a healer, those kinds of things to do this. You can just foster it when you go out into the world and how you make connections with people and how open you're willing to be in moments. My husband and I went the other night to the community bathhouse place that I was talking about. I found myself wanting it to be quiet. And then I realized by the end of the night, that's not what that space was created for. It was actually created in the image of the old Roman bathhouses where people would go and be in community and they would go and learn from each other and talk to each other and make connections. And I realized, oh, I need to reset my expectations of what this space is. If I want that quiet contemplation, I have to create that for myself somewhere else. That's not what this space is. And can I be a part of this and allow it to just be as it is without being irritated by that because that wasn't my expectation going in? So also be aware of your judgments and your expectations of community spaces and community leaders. It's a hard job. It's a hard job to bring people together, and community leaders are not perfect either. And so notice how you are contributing to more unity, or if you're contributing to more disconnection and polarity in the way you're judging things and the way you're showing up in those communities. So that's my challenge to you this month as you are showing up in the different places in your life that you interact with other people. All right, so those are the themes. Lots of things to think about this month, lots of things to work on. I hope that this update really serves you well and it gives you a roadmap. Even though we're changing without a roadmap this month, I hope it gives you a roadmap of how to navigate. And please don't forget to like and subscribe. That just helps me get this out to more people. It's very hard to get this out into the world sometimes. There's a lot of people playing the algorithm, and I don't play that game. So anything that you can do to help get this to others, if you feel like it resonates and you want to send it around, that would be greatly appreciated. And if you want to join in and get support on any of these themes, we're going to be meeting on June 10th at 7 p.m. Eastern to work on all 4 of these themes. It will be some channeled teachings and a couple of activations to help you navigate the energies of June. All right, so check that out below this video if this information resonates with you and you want more support. As always, check out the other events that I'm hosting as well below this video. I'd love to see you if you're in the local Charlotte area at an upcoming workshop. All right, have a great month, everybody. Thanks so much for watching, and I'll see you next month.